kind of questions. What are you hearing people say as far as concern?
Well, I hear that their major concern is that they fear that they're going to be forced to pay for parking. That's one of the big concerns. And that's actually a legitimate concern. It's not like an emotional one. It's just that that's what killed downtown Flint in the 70s, is we paid parking, and when they opened up the malls, they went that way. So anyway, by the way, anybody who's joining in, I'm talking to Dick Ramsdell. He's the market manager at the Flint City Farmers Market, located in the city of Flint, Michigan, and we're talking about the idea of moving the market to a more closer to downtown location, and it's on First Street, right?
First Street, yeah. Yes. It is the newer of the two Journal buildings. Yep. If folks have not been downtown in a while, they probably don't even know where it is. But everybody will remember the old Journal building on the corner of Harrison and First.
Right.
That's where the presses first were, where all the Journal offices were. And then 7 years ago, they built for some $30 million or something a new press facility just to the east. It's actually right straight across the street from Wilson Park. They're on the edge of the U of M campus. And when the Journal, you and I wouldn't even be talking about this if the Journal had not changed their business model 2 years ago. When newspapers began to tank and really had to restructure completely, the Journal decided that print facility was not necessary for them. So they moved their printing, I think it's up in Saginaw, I'm not sure. They pulled the presses out of that building, and they actually vacated the old office building too. So if you go to the Journal offices now, you'll go down on Saginaw Street in the Road building. It's a very nice, much smaller place. But since they vacated those two buildings, that opened up a lot of space downtown. And the market is part of a much larger project, which extends all the way from the Mott Foundation building all the way over to 475. And if you go right behind the Mott Foundation building to the east, that's Genesee Towers. That's going to come down. It's going to come down probably in September, certainly this fall. And then you go across Harrison Street and you come to the old Journal building. And that is going to be a graduate program for public health connected with Michigan State University. And I understand there are going to be some law offices upstairs there too. But essentially it is a teaching facility for Michigan State for their students who are in med school here at the hospitals in Flint. And then if you go east from there, then that's where this big print building is, which is relatively new, like 7 years old or something like that. Absolutely empty right now, 75,000 square feet. The east side of that has yet to be leased out. The west side is where the new market will be moving.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're going to show on your camera any of the renderings that we have. Actually, I think we'll have some really cool renderings of potentially what it may look like inside in a while. We're not there quite yet. But the west side of that print building is about 2.5 times the size of this current market. And that's the proposed new site of this market.
Now, some people are concerned that there are not going to be any outside vendors because they can't see where the space would be allowed for that,
Well, let me address that, but I forgot. Let me go back also. You talked about the parking.
Right.
There's a huge parking lot right between the old Journal building and the new Journal building.
Okay.
And that will be private property. That will be market parking. But there's also parking across the street, which if you go down there during university hours now, it looks as if it's all filled up. And until U of M left this spring and the students graduated, it was all filled up. Tuesdays and Thursdays we'll have plenty of space on the market lot. Saturdays there will be space at that U of M lot on the streets and at a lot to the east of the building. There will actually be more unpaid. That's really important.
Right.
I don't remember the 70s when they started making people pay for parking, but, and I doubt that's one of the things that killed downtown. But if that's an issue with people, the parking is not going to be paid. And then your question about I've forgotten. What was the
Let's see about the outdoor vendors.
Outdoor vendors, thank you, yes. The original drawings and the rendering that you may be able to take a picture of shows a 20-foot wide canopy around the outside of the market with the idea that vendors would back up to that canopy and the outside vendors would be selling facing the market wall, but out of the back of their trucks. Really kind of a neat one-sided aisle where if you're shopping, you're not looking on both sides. You're only looking on one side because that's where the farmers are. But in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the plans have changed so that now there's going to be an extension out from the west side of that building along First Street and a pavilion that represented or is exactly like the one that we've got outside. Not quite as big, but I think 30 spots, 24 spots, 30 spots, which when you add to the spots alongside the market building, I think it would create a really cool effect, and it will remind people, at least that outside pavilion, of this whole place that they care so much about.
See, another thing is there is a sentimental part of the people's opposition, obviously. I mean, I think that's more of the cause of the outrage. Basically, the best way I can term it is outrage about the idea of moving.
Me too.
Yeah, so I mean, and I can understand that because this is the only market I've ever known.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old. I'll be turning 50 next Wednesday. So I mean, this is the only market. My dad worked at the post office across the street from here. He used to pick up stuff from the market, occasionally to bring home when he had time. Lunch hour. He used to be able to come over here. So, but another thing is too, it's like this area too, though, is set on the river here, where it's currently located. I personally think it looks much better than in the middle of where it's going to be next. You got the MTA bus barn across the way, and that's not a very attractive building, in my opinion. I mean,
well, believe me, I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I have been fighting these battles inside my own head for the last year and a half because I love this funky old place.
Right.
I mean, this is part of Flint tradition, and one of the things we do in Flint is knock down our history a lot.
We do that all the time.
We do that all the time. This is not going to get knocked down, incidentally. I'll tell you in a minute what's going to happen. But the whole idea of this being really important because it is traditionally significant to the community is absolutely an argument that makes all kinds of sense. And it's a reason to pause a long, long ways before you say, let's risk changing that. I'm not sure we'll lose it all, but let's risk changing that to move the market into a downtown area, which admittedly has more cement. It's not next to the river.
Right.
2 things I think will be different about the landscape down there by the time this thing moves. 1, Genesee Towers will be down. I think that will change the whole atmosphere of downtown significantly because that's a big chunk of ugly cement, in my perspective, that's going to be gone. The other thing is it's right across from Wilson Park. In Wilson Park, there are a lot of people I've talked to who remember concerts in Wilson Park back, in the 80s?
Right.
90s. I think that can be reused. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen between the new market building and Wilson Park, but at least there's conversation that First Street will be blocked off on market days, maybe on Saturdays, but on market days. Maybe even eventually grassed over, so you go right from the market into Wilson Park. And that's not going to recapture the river, but it's going to give a green space right next to the market. The other thing is the parking lot is not going to be completely empty the way this one is. There won't be a lot of trees, but at least there's going to be a little bit of landscaping, and I think that will break up the feeling of the fact that that's just a place that's covered with cement.
Yeah.
So I absolutely understand, and I'm one of the people who has wrestled with this a lot as far as this place is part of Flint's history and tradition. The tipping argument for me is the fact that I think this place has reached its potential right now. And here, there's no community room. There's no commercial kitchen. it is not handicap accessible. And you mentioned the bus station. I see the bus station, honestly, potentially as an advantage for a whole lot of people. Don't come to this market now because they don't have cars. It's too hard to transfer twice to get down here. So what they do is they don't come. Or they come in your ride, or they have to wait and get a ride, and 4 or 5 people carpool together. I may be wrong, but I have the feeling that the bus station for those folks is going to be an advantage.
I can see your point.
That they will be able to shop instead of taking a direct transfer and doing the do-si-do there between buses in the bus station. They can skip one transfer time, come over to the market and shop, then come back and pick up their transfer and go home or to work or wherever. I think the community room is a huge potential asset because one of the things we've done in this market for the last 10 years is to get a lot of partners and a lot of groups who either want to hold events down here or who want to have their members be part of what's going on there. It's all fine in the summer because we can pitch tents out there and have activities and all that kind of thing. But in the winter, it's not possible.
Right.
There's no space to do this. And the other thing, some of the vendors now have decided that they don't want to go with us. There are 3 or 4 who, for whatever reason, are making other choices, and that's their business decision. One of the things I would say to both vendors and customers is, come down here in the winter on a Tuesday and Thursday, and you will see that this little building has almost nobody here. Sales in the winter, we boosted them a lot on Saturdays. We've worked really hard to do that, and I think that's been one of our successes. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my anticipation is that market downtown, at least at lunch hour and at the end of the day when people are getting off work, the vendors are going to make some money in the winter as well as just in the summer. Right now, they make all their money in the summer, and they hold on in the winter. These are the folks on the inside.
Right.
Folks on the outside obviously are gone in the winter. Folks on the inside hang on in the winter so that they can make whatever money they make in the summer. I think that's going to balance out downtown much more because there is a stable customer base down there.
Another thing I've heard that people have asked, and because they think of things like, logically, currently people could basically back up right to their space where they're at and unload. Whereas, are they going to put those kind of separate entrances into the new building?
Can't.
They can't.
And this is one of the places where I'm going to argue that some of the vendors will be upset with me. This market building, which was designed vendor-friendly, there's 4. That's not a knock on anybody, but it's saying that, yes, they have, whether they are the jewelry vendor or a produce vendor, they've been able to back right up to their door. They are thinking of themselves first as opposed to their customers first or the folks who will serve downtown. And I would, I'm talking on TV here now, I will say this absolutely to anybody who wants to argue with me. I would take the side of a handicapped person who's going to be able to shop downtown and be able to get into that building without any trouble and eat at Steady Eddie's or go to the art gallery, which they can't do here because they're upstairs. I'll take the side of that person as opposed to the side of a vendor who may have to figure out a little bit of a different pattern as to how they load their product in at any single time. Yes, they're going to. I'm not sure it's an inconvenience. Well, of course it'll be an inconvenience because right now they just back up and they're right there. But as a trade-off, as a service to the community, as potentially more sales, as a service to people who can't utilize this place, that's a trade-off you need to make.
Okay.
And you shouldn't make a decision about whether you're going with us or not going with us based on convenience.
Now, another thing, so, see if we get back to the point. Now, what was the plans for this, but tentatively? Now, this building you're currently occupying.
This is very interesting because obviously that's one of the first questions we got was, what are you going to do with that old building? Because whether we like your move or not is going to depend on, are you going to knock this place down? Are you just going to leave it empty like a bunch of buildings in Flint and have it get stripped in the first month? No. Have you heard of aquaponics?
Yeah, I have heard of it, yeah.
Okay. For folks who are watching this who don't know, hydroponics means you grow vegetables or grow produce with water instead of soil.
Right.
All right. Aquaponics, you put fish in the water. So the fish fertilize the water. The water gets pumped into the beds for whatever you're growing, lettuce or herbs or whatever. The plants then use those nutrients out of the water, and the water recycles back into the fish tanks. It's not a completely closed system, but it works. And there are 3 groups now that have approached me with the idea that they would like to put an aquaponics growing facility right down this aisle here in this market. I think that would be so cool. There are a lot of things that have to be worked out. Nobody's made any final decisions. But a couple of us are going to Chicago in about 3 weeks to see a working setup in Chicago. We know that there's a group in Florida that is making a lot of money by not only doing it in Florida, but setting up sites all over the world, actually. I have heard, I haven't seen it, but Epcot Center apparently has an aquaponics demonstration where they show exactly not only how it works, but the fact that it works well enough so that whoever sets it up makes some money. And I can see a place like this growing fish that gets sold at the market, growing lettuce or whatever herbs or whatever else will grow that gets sold at the market. And so you not only keep this cool old building, you obviously have to reconfigure it some way, but you keep this old building, but you keep it in the food system too. And all that property out there, why couldn't that be hookah? Grow the same kind of thing that these folks right behind me here are doing out on their land, wherever it is.
That's it.
This is not just some guys downtown thought it would be cool to steal something that the rest of us love and bring it into their turf. That's some of the overtones, I think, of some of the opposition to this, is that uptown or whoever, you do something really well, they want it as part of their game. It's been thought through a lot more than that. No question. I personally feel, and a lot of people feel, that this market downtown will not only enhance the market, but will also enhance downtown. But it's a process that really has been thought through.
See, now, the one thing I have an objection to, like personally, is that we seem to overdevelop the downtown area. There's all the other surrounding areas around it, and we're on our own. The downtown community gets whatever they want, it seems like, politically, economically. The rest of us are basically left on our own. I mean, I live on the east side of Flint. We have no input. We're totally shut off. We have no representation.
Let me just ask you. This is where the master plan fits in. And I'm not involved directly. I'm involved just like you as a citizen in that. But I think the whole idea of the master plan is what I think a lot of people don't understand is that federal dollars, grant funds, and then also, if the private people who want to put money into downtown, that's where they're going to put it. That's their decision. That's their business decision. That's what's going to happen. Those restaurants that have gone in down there, those are a risk, honestly, for the people who put up the money, but they put up their own money to make those things happen. The market going downtown, because to answer your question, my understanding is it's going to be about a $5 or $6 million project. There are not $5 or $6 million real dollars that are available to fix this place up. Given the money could be made available, but relative to what it would produce here and whether this would be a really sustainable place, that's a decision people would make. But the thing that makes it possible downtown is it is tax credit dollars, my understanding. I'm not a financial person. But the money that is being put together for this entire package, including Genesee Towers and MSU and all of the whole area, tax credits have been able to be leveraged, which make it possible to put the market downtown. And so I understand exactly where you're coming from. I hate what has happened to the east side. I hate what has happened to the north side. I think that's where those of us who care about those areas are going to have to become really creative in terms of saying as citizens, okay, what should happen out there? But I think we also need to understand that a lot of the money that is available goes to development in the core of an area first, and then the theory is, anyway, that percolates out. When you're sitting in a neighborhood and houses are getting burned down and people are leaving and people are really distraught and just struggling, that's making an argument like that is hard to listen to. I understand. But the world is a real place, you know, and sometimes folks who have access to the funds and who want to use those funds in a certain way get to do that, and the rest of us say, okay, you know, that's the way it is, and we work around it.
Well, I'm just glad that this building has got some potential life after the market.
I think it has not only potential life, it has a potential exciting life.
So that's really innovative. I mean, I know there. So my friend and I have a friend of mine that used to do a show with me on YouTube named Larry Crescetti, and he and I were talking about the old Buick site maybe becoming like a place where they can actually raise fish commercially, and also, you know, because it's such a huge area, you know, open.
So you don't need that much space.
No, you don't need that much space, but they have. See, the thing is, they can always develop something along that because that's a brownfield, and a lot of people are not. It's not going to be a good place for residential, you know, maybe forever. But they could do it, but the cost of it to resurrect that would be immense, millions of dollars to, you know, clean those up, you know, from the industrial waste. But now one thing I think is, I don't know if you ever heard about this, but growing certain forms of mushrooms and what they consider brownfields actually extracts the negative, you know, the bad chemicals from it within 1 or 2 generations, which is really quick. Of
you
mushrooms.
And I are not going to eat those mushrooms.
Right, actually, they've tested them and they actually claim it. They were totally edible. They don't. It seems not to be passed on to the mushroom.
You know what else does that? Sunflowers.
Yeah. Well, really, I didn't know that.
Can you imagine Buick City up there as a field of, not dreams, but a field of sunflowers?
Well, I think it'd be a great thing.
Wouldn't that be spectacular?
So I was unaware that they had that cleansing ability to take the
I'm not
stuff
an
out the soil.
expert on this, actually. The lady at the booth right down here knows a great deal about this kind of thing, but I knew about some of the mushrooms, but then sunflowers do the same thing.
And that's a good thing too, because always make oils, and you do is used for so many industrial uses too. So, but no, I'm glad that we finally had a good chance to sit down and talk, because, and I definitely, this is going to be put up, and hopefully it inspire more people to actually start looking at this a little bit more with less of emotional. And I got to admit, I was very emotional about myself.
Well, I wasn't either to begin with.
Yeah.
I wasn't either to begin with. Oh, wait a minute, let's think about this. But you know what this whole thing has been going on for about a year now, since it hit Facebook about this time last year that there was the possibility of the move. And there's just been a ton of negative chatter. I would love in this town, admittedly, we've been slapped in the face with a lot of things that we didn't have any control over. But if some of us could begin to channel that negative energy into positive, okay, let's use our heads. If it's not sunflowers and it's not fish, maybe it's something else. And that's where the energy for rebuilding this town is going to come from. It's not all going to come from the Mott Foundation and people downtown and all that kind of thing. It's going to come from guys like you and me. And you're younger than I am, so you get to do it. I'm tired. I'm worn out.
Well, you actually retired from one career.
Well, I did.
Yeah. So I mean,
I got myself in deeper in a second career than I ever expected.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're a teacher in the Flint schools.
Yeah. Right.
And at least I knew you were at Central. I don't know if you were there before or after.
I taught most of my career at Central. Yeah.
So I mean, teachers basically they have a lot to do during the school year, but it's basically you leave it behind when you go home. You take your papers home, maybe to grade.
No, you don't
plan.
leave it behind.
No, but you don't. So you never do that. You never had that. So you actually did transitioned from something very high intensity emotion and intellect. You had basically a lot of your mental energy geared towards that daily teaching. I don't know. I'm sorry. I never had you as a teacher when I was
No,
there.
it was social studies.
Social studies. Okay.
Yeah.
So so I'm a social science major myself at the University of Michigan for my master's degree. So.
We'll talk off camera about some of that sometime.
But I think that it's really interesting that you are basically, for all practical purposes, and I'm not saying this to build you up overly, but you were considered like one of the pillars of the community, in a sense, because you're involved in a lot of other things before you become part of the market.
Well, that's a very nice compliment.
Yeah.
There are lots of pillars to this community.
Right.
If I'm one of them or a little piece of one, that's very nice. Thank you very much. But there are a whole lot of people who are working hard. I mean, and one of the reasons you're doing this is to begin to get positive information out, and not just PR stuff, but actually talking about issues. We got a long ways to go in this town. We still get slapped in the face every time the national media comes around here. But it's things like this. If we pick at it, won't it be interesting? Now we went from being a lumbering town to being a wooden carriage town to being put a motor in those carriages car town. Where are we? 20 years from now, you'll be my age.
Yeah,
all right? What's this town going to be like?
My guess, from what I see right now, I think it's going to be a major center for education. The University of Michigan, Mott Community College, Michigan State University is going to have a presence here now. I think that's going to be it. And plus, you have Kettering and Baker, but Kettering and Baker.
They're very important parts of that puzzle. Yeah.
And I see this is actually going to be a contender. Within 30 years, I think we're going to be a major contender for other major university towns in the Midwest, and certainly probably, and I'd say eventually, the rest of the country.
But good for us.
Yeah, and there's challenges to that too, because the education system's changed the education has, where people are doing so much online.
Sure.
But I still think we could probably be part of that as well.
Absolutely.
So but that's where I see, because I worked for several years at the University of Michigan Flint, and there's a lot of good, solid things going on there.
Absolutely.
And so, it is kind of it's never going to be a shop town again. It's never going to be a factory town, which I'm personally.
It's got to be a mix.
Yeah, you got to have a mix.
That complex out on Van Slyke is really important.
Right.
And they need to stay there. Bishop Airport is really important.
Another gem actually in the crown of this town.
And 20 years from now, wait till they build that water pipeline and see how that's going to change things in this community positively. That's going to be a huge plus. And there are a bunch of, you're mentioning education. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
We just got to be smart as we go.
Well, I thank you for your time there, and hopefully everything goes okay with this.
I hope your battery held out.
Although I got another battery too.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you very much, Dick Ramsdell. And anybody wants to contact you, do you want to give any contact information? Or?
They can contact me down here at the market. Probably get on the market website, and they can hook me up that way.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks.